Hey, everybody, and welcome to Flourish 2019. I'm Christina Louise. I'm so excited and really honored to be your host here today. And today I have a very special guest, and we're coming to you from very special locations here in the US. Her name is Crystalia Marie, and she's here to help you understand exactly what self-love is. We hear a lot about that. We're going to dig into well, what does that mean and how do I get it? And why it's so essential to you flourishing this year. And we're also going to talk about how it can help you create more energy and give you that boost and that pep in your step that you need to start attracting all the things that you really want in your life. Welcome, Crystalia. I'm so excited to have you with us here today.
Christina, I am so excited to be here with you too. This is going to be fun. We're going to have some fun and play a little, huh?
Yeah. Why don't you tell the viewers where we are today?
Well, we are each on our beds in our bedrooms. That's my headboard and that's her headboard.
That's my headboard. These are my pillows that I sleep on every night. And we're coming to you from our bedrooms today because our purpose is to be here to support you in flourishing this year. And we will not let anything stop us, even injuries or disease of any types. We're here, we are owning it, and we want to inspire you and not even try to hide it, right?
Right.
We were talking about oh, should we cover up the background? And it's no, one of us has an injury. And we're going to do this from our bed because it's important that we're here with you today. And we're just going to own it. And we want to encourage you all to do the same thing. Is there anything you want to add to that, Crystalia?
No, I think that says it all.
Yeah,
it really is so important for us to own it and to really, do what we need to do no matter what. And yeah, exactly. Injury or not, it's all good.
Absolutely. Cool. So I feel to me, you're the queen of self-love. How did you even get into that topic or genre? How did that become your niche or your thing that you're standing for in the world?
Well, actually, back in my 20s, I started to recognize I had some self-esteem issues, and I left my first husband. And at that point, I started dating another fellow shortly afterwards. And long story short, I ended up with him beating me up and stabbing me with one of my kitchen knives. And at that point, I started really looking at how did I create that experience. Now, it wasn't about beating myself up. I had a therapist, so that was part of who was helping me look at all of these issues. And I started working on self-esteem and self-love because what had happened was I had already had a problem with this man. I broke it off, and he showed up at my door knowing I had a house full of guests. And rather than have, a big scene in front of all my guests, I let him in. Then when they all left, I, again, couldn't get him to leave, and I didn't want to create a scene, and he ended up there. So anyway, long story short, as I said, he beat me up, and he stabbed me with one of my kitchen knives. So I started really working more deeply and deeply on self-love. But what ended up happening was years later, so I did 13 years of talk therapy. I did all kinds of affirmations and all kinds of healing work and so on. And fast forward in 2000, I was in a course that I was taking, a holistic energy healing course, soul retrieval and that type of thing. And the teacher said, so who in the audience feels like they've healed something? And I raised my hand, and she said, come on up. And I said, she says, so what is it you feel you've healed? And I said, I really think I've healed my self-love issues. And she did some muscle checking, applied kinesiology. And I miserably failed, basically, because she had me say I love myself fully or totally and completely, and I miserably failed. And what we discovered in the process of muscle checking was I had an underlying belief that God would punish me for loving myself. And at that point, I learned this whole process of changing to getting to a core belief to make affirmations work. And there's a whole process I teach. I learned it in her course. I've enhanced it with my symbols and so on. But that was when I really realized how many of us really put everybody else first and don't really take care of our own needs. And that we have core beliefs that we haven't even tapped into. So we can do self-esteem affirmations. We can do all this stuff, and we're not getting to the core that's really keeping us from
Mm-hmm.
fully embracing whatever it is. I don't care what area of your life you're working on.
Yeah.
And in my case, it was God was going to punish me if I loved myself. That was the belief.
There's two pieces that I want to pick up on there. First of all, I'm sorry to hear about that awful domestic violence that you went through. I also went through domestic violence for many years as well, so I can empathize. And I'm so proud of you for being strong enough and courageous enough and bold enough to even ask the question of like, how did I create this? How did I contribute to this?
Right.
Right. And not playing the victim.
Right.
And I think that might trigger some people, but stick with us.
Right.
Stay open-minded. And what I say to my members and my clients who I work with is, do you really want to live in a world where you are a victim and like things are just totally out of your control and happening to you?
Right.
Or do you want to take a 50-50 ship? Oh, did I say that right? 50-50 ownership in the experiences that you have with others.
Right.
Right. And asking yourself, maybe a better way to say it for some people who are new to this idea is, how did I allow this to happen?
Right.
How did I invite this? How did I open the door to this and start taking some responsibility for our choices and our actions, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I wanted to pick up on is what you said about this core belief that you discovered, that God would be mad at you for loving yourself. Aren't some of I'm finding that a lot of the negative core beliefs that I have are absolutely freaking nuts. Like nuts so, right? Like,
right.
I was just sharing with my partner earlier today that I have a belief that sharing or giving to a partner unconditionally, if I feel like I'm giving more, I feel like I'm losing somehow. And we know because of the natural laws of the universe that that's just completely opposite. So I just wanted to touch on, if other people out there are wondering why they've done all this work. That's the other thing I wanted to say is I hear it from so many women all over the world. It's like, I've been working on this for years and I thought I was over this, and what's wrong with me? And so what do you have to say about that?
What I say about it is you probably haven't gotten to that core underlying belief and bridged forward from it. I did self-love affirmations in the mirror, all the different processes and everything. And there I was, and I was in shock. And finding that real deep core belief, yes, it's a journey getting there, but when you can get to that, the changes that can happen so fast.
So fast. But I think that all those years that you spent in talk therapy, I don't think talk therapy is going to get you to the finish line, but I do think it's an important part of the puzzle sometimes. But it's like all those years that we spent, I spent years in talk therapy too. All those years that we spent in talk therapy, looking in the mirror, it was breaking down layers and helping us get closer to that crazy, that backwards belief that's really holding us back.
Yeah, it really is. And so I think the talk therapy was what helped me get to that point. And a lot of times when we're looking for that core belief, we don't really want to touch it. It's like, it's a little scary at times.
A little scary?
Yeah, more than a little scary. Yeah,
like until you break through it and you're on the other side, then all of a sudden you're like, why was I afraid to do this? But getting to it, I think, is one of the most intense, courageous, scariest things we can do.
Absolutely.
Even though there's really nothing to be afraid of.
It
we
really
don't know
isn't.
that. So the fear is real, man.
Yeah. Well, I had a situation where I was sexually abused by my father from birth, okay? Now, it wasn't where it was harmful so much as it felt good, so because he was only touching. But I had my therapist, a girlfriend, and my sister tell me that had to have happened. And it wasn't until I was almost 50 years old, I was laying on a reflexology table, and I started getting flashbacks. That's how deep I buried it.
Yeah.
And I, finally I sobbed and went through a whole healing process. But the gift of really uncovering that and seeing how it created this pattern of my attracting men into my life that I thought loved me because it felt good, because it was sexual, and it, all of those things. And so a lot of times we don't even understand how many things these things we've buried impact all the different aspects of our life. And looking at it now, I can see that. But yeah, it's a journey. We couldn't possibly handle everything that we have to deal with, like, all at one time anyway. We have to have that journey. It's no different than how we learn to walk or learned how to spell or write or anything, We have steps to take, and that's part of the journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
so no more beating yourselves up, ladies, because you're not there yet.
Right, right. But what's really key, in my opinion, is if someone says to you, let's say as an example, you're really struggling with something, and someone gives you an insight, and most people say, "Oh, I've already dealt with that. I've already healed all that." Just like me with raising my hand. And the truth is, if someone's saying it to you, take a moment and really look at it even deeper, because it's almost as though source, spirit, God, whatever word you use, is giving you another messenger. And so often I, as well as most of us, have ignored the messenger.
Mm-hmm. So we touched on a really sensitive topic that I think a lot of women can relate to.
Mm-hmm.
The last time I checked the statistics, it was something like 8 out of 10 women and 7 out of 10 boys by the time they're 18 years old will have dealt with some type of sexual abuse.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I'm sorry that that happened, and thank you so much for being vulnerable and courageous enough to share that piece of information and that part of your story with us. And I just want to echo that for a moment, because you hit on two big pieces here. One is how we bury things and how well we hide things even from ourselves in order to survive. So
Right.
nothing to feel guilty about or ashamed about there. Just being aware that there is, like you said, there's so much stuff going on in childhood and adulthood and teenagers, and it just keeps packing in. And it's like, you can't remember all of it. You can't stay conscious of all of it. You can't handle all of it. You would literally explode, in my opinion.
Right.
And so we get really good. And I have a story similar to yours where I didn't realize, I'm 38 now, and it was just not even a year ago, just about a year ago, that I realized that I had been inappropriately sexually touched when I was very, very, very young as well by my grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
And I had no idea. Like, I saw those statistics up on the wall and I thought, thank God I'm one of the few girls that never happened to. And it was something, I'm going to be super vulnerable here. It was something that I had I took pride in that like, oh, good, I escaped childhood without having to go through that, and I don't have to deal with that. Yay, one less thing. I have a lot on my plate that I did have to deal with. But that was one thing that I thought I didn't have to deal with until last year, when I was working with, like you were working with, a therapist. And that's why it's so essential that we have at least one person in our lives that we're willing to get really intimate with.
Mm-hmm.
So that it's safe for us to bring this stuff up to the surface. I saw it in a hypnotherapy session. I started having flashbacks then. So, and then the other thing that I wanted to touch on that you said is, it's a very good tip to take a second look. Like when people ask you questions and you think, oh, I already know what you're going to say, or I'm already over that, or I don't have to deal with that, kind of like I did with my sexual abuse. Oh yeah, I don't have to deal with that. I love that you pulled that out for the viewers to say, take another look, be open. The fact that you're attracting this person and they're saying it to you, it must have some value for you.
Right.
So
Yep. And
slow down and pay attention to what you're attracting. It means something. There's nothing random here going on, right?
Right. Yeah, that's so key, because often we're just like, oh no, I've already dealt with all that.
That's the hiding mechanism. That's the part of us that just doesn't, believes that it can't handle it. But at some point you have to deal with it, because it is dealing with you. So let's talk about what self-love, in your opinion, in your definition, what does that mean to you exactly?
That really means taking care of your own needs, not without considering your partner or your family's needs, but to take care of your own needs first. Because just like the oxygen mask on the plane, if you don't put it on first, you can't help anyone else. It's the same kind of thing. It's not about being self-centered to the point it's my way or the highway type of thing, but it is about really taking care of your own needs so that you can be there with the rest of the people in your life and share and be present. And too often, especially for women, we tend to overdo. We constantly want to help everybody else and do everything else, and we don't take care of our own needs. And the problem with that is then we can't long term sustain that, and we end up ill or having other challenges in our life. And so to me, self-love is all about taking care of your own needs so that you can be more present with your family and you can be more present with your partner and even with your work. So that's what I consider self-love. And probably the best example, a lot of people say, well, isn't it selfish? And I say, not really if you make sure that you have put together a whole blend and consider everybody and had the conversations with everyone involved, because the truth is you won't be there to help them long term.
Thank you. I'm glad that you pulled that out. In fact, I was thinking of a quote by Neil Donald Walsh, the author of Conversations with God.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in his book, he said, when we do what's truly best for ourselves, we are doing what's best for the other people. I
Yes.
hear that from women all the time. Like when they're in a session with me, they're feeling guilty that they're not with their child, or guilty that they're not with their husband, or guilty that they're not
Mm-hmm.
making more money, because, to justify their investment in themselves. So I know it's a huge, huge issue. What are some signs, in your opinion, that I am lacking self-love?
Um, Typically the woman that's, or anyone that's overdoing, trying to like overcompensate, they're busy letting everyone else run their lives. They're giving up their power to their job, even their spouse, or even their children by like way overdoing instead of taking care of their own needs. So someone that never takes care of doing what they love and instead are always busy doing, and then sacrifice what they love to the point of never even having anything that brings them joy.
Mm. And then that's where the resentment and the anger and the
Yes,
snapping, then I go into guilt, right? It's
of
like I
course.
don't love myself. I don't think that I'm good enough to create space for myself in my own
Right.
schedule, right? And to do what I want to do and what I love to do. I got to put the kids first. I got to put my husband first. I got to put my boss first, my sister, what my mom wants from me
Yep.
first. And then you can do that for a little while, but then the resentment and the anger builds up, then you blow up, and then you start feeling guilty and ashamed of yourself.
Yes.
So then you go right back into overdoing it and trying to compensate. So
Right.
how do we get out of this cycle?
Well, to me, one of the key things is first recognizing it, of course. The
Yeah.
second is really understanding what your beliefs are about yourself so that you can start clearing those and start working towards creating more positive beliefs that you're worthy, that you're lovable, all of those things.
Mhm.
And then I think it really comes down to sitting down with those other people and saying, I really want to be here long term with you and I love you. And we need to find a balance here. I can't do it all. If you want me to be here, the only way you're going to have a happy mom, a happy partner, is if we find more balance. And how do we do that? So, and I think a lot of times we, as women in particular, we so overdo that we push people away to keep from doing the things. They almost think they can't do them after a
Oh,
while.
say that again. That was really good.
They push people away as though they think, almost as though the other person ends up thinking, well, I guess I can't do it because I'm not doing it good enough, and so on. So that's a key to the whole thing, is being able to let others do some of the things and accepting that they're not going to do it exactly the way you would, and who cares? It's not important. I'll
That's
use the
good.
example. You want to hear this is really
Yeah.
fun.
I do. Go ahead.
My last husband and I had this huge fight. I had folded towels, and I had a specific way my mother taught me to fold towels, and he had just folded them up and a totally different way, and they didn't fit in the closet right. We had this big fight about it. And I look back at it and I'm like, how silly that was. I'd be happy now if he opened the cabinet door and just threw them in and closed the door, right? I mean, that's how different I am now that I realize how anal, for lack of another word, that really was. And, you know, we tend to be perfect, like everybody has to do everything this perfect way. And you know what? When you look at it from take a step back and look at, who cares? Does it really matter? Do you really care enough about whether that's done exactly your way when it risks losing that person you love? Yeah. Yep.
So where do you think your belief that God would be mad at you if you loved yourself came from?
Okay, so I was brought up Catholic, and I would not say that either the nuns or the priests actually taught me that, but I would say that probably some things they did teach me made me interpret what they were saying to mean that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say that's probably what happened in my case. But you know, two people can hear the exact same words, and their interpretation on a subconscious level can be so different.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, two people experiencing the same thing. I mean, people know, like you see an accident and the stories are like totally different, except they were right there together and they saw it, right? It's the
It's
same
true.
thing with our subconscious beliefs and the things we take on. Everyone has their own internal mechanism to interpret what it means for them and take that in and make it their core belief.
Yeah. And so I think that's another reason why it's important for me to stress to everybody watching to have so much gentleness and so much compassion for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I don't want people walking away thinking like, oh God, I'm like infected with these negative beliefs and there's something wrong with me. It's like we all pick up negative beliefs. We all like it's just a part of life and we have to deal
Yes.
with it. It's kind of I like to tell people it's like your clothes getting dirty when you wear them. Like
Mm-hmm.
you don't get bent out of shape because you have to wash your clothes every day, do you? No, it's just a consequence of living life or going to the
Right.
bathroom after you eat. Like you don't go, oh God, I've got negative crap in me. Well, you know, like it's just a part of living life and you need to know what you're dealing, you know, what's going on so that you can deal with it in a healthy, uplifting, positive way.
Right. And I like to remind people too that if we didn't have these experiences, if we didn't create these beliefs, if we didn't do all, there would be nothing to exist for, really, because wouldn't it be really boring if it was all perfect? There would be no polarity and you know, I mean, it's part of living life is that whole polarity and the fact that, yes, there are these negative beliefs. There are also lots of positive beliefs. So this is another interesting thing I discovered just a couple years, just like a year and a half ago. I had some kind of an injury or something, something silly, and I don't remember what it was, but we always tend to look at the negative side. And what I had done instead in this case was I was so to the positive side that I'd thrown myself out of balance. So it isn't
Mm-hmm.
always the negative. It's sometimes we throw ourselves out of balance to the positive side that can cause an issue too. It's about finding and loving ourselves and giving ourselves a loving space to honor where we're at and try to move ourselves to where we would like to be. That's the way I
I
see it.
I love your focus on balance. I was just sharing with a member of my community yesterday that because we were talking about negative emotion and negative beliefs and I was like, listen, I just want you to understand something that first of all, anger can be super helpful. It's not always negative, right? Like if somebody's chasing me down and I get angry enough to punch them in the face, that's a good thing, right? Right?
Yes.
Right? You need anger, right? And then on the opposite side, like when we get too excited, right? It's unbalancing too. Have you ever tried
Yes.
to, you know, but like for the viewers, have you ever tried to talk to somebody who's like, oh, I'm so excited. It's like too much. So it's not about, you know, just working on the negative. It's about bringing things into the balance here,
Right.
and letting the energy stay in the middle and like, ooh, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes, I'm all about balance, but then I am a Libra too.
So are there any other keys that you have to share with us today around self-love? Or did we
Well,
cover them all already?
I think we've pretty well covered them. I think the other piece is to really pay attention to your emotions
Mm-hmm.
and how you're really feeling. And really, a lot of us tend to bury our feelings. So that would be the other key, is to really pay attention to your feelings and start to look at, okay, how do I feel? How does that impact what I'm doing in my life? Too often we ignore our feelings and just shove them and bury them and so on, and then we melt down eventually, the anger thing and
Mm-hmm.
all of that. Sure, anger is important at times. Sure, all of these things are important, but it's also important to pay attention to those feelings.
So how did you come to start creating these beautiful Christographs that you share with people all over the world?
Well, actually, this is a kind of funny story. So, as a kid, my father was a professional artist, and I drew a rose, and it was so good that he thought I traced it, and I got yelled at, and I never drew another thing. And fast forward, I was introduced to Reiki in the mid 1990s, and as soon as I got to the symbols that were in Reiki, I dismissed Reiki because I'm like, I need symbols. So 4 years after that, I was introduced to another healer and author, and her book had these symbols in it. And I was flying across country, and I was reading the book. Somebody gifted it to me, and I got to this one symbol, and every time I would get to look at it, I would start sobbing. Now, the funny thing is, I was in first class, and my little ego kicked in and said, this is embarrassing. Everybody's looking at you. Like, probably no one noticed, right? But, And then, so I put the book away, and then I was like, oh, it can't be that symbol. I opened up the book, and I'd start sobbing again. So I ended up studying with her, and she's the same person that found the underlying belief that God would punish me if I loved myself. So I was one of her practitioners and using these symbols with people and so on. And I ended up with a golf ball sized lump in one of my breasts. And I worked with her work and all kinds of other stuff. At the time was living in Sedona, and there was a plethora of healers. Went to all these different healers, and nothing was changing. And the thing was, I refused to go to the medical, the regular allopathic medicine. That's a choice I made. I'm not suggesting anyone here do that, but that was my choice. And one day this medical intuitive said, you need to draw those images floating in your aura. And I rolled my eyes, said, yeah, right. And the next day I started seeing these images, and I started drawing them, and I drew 60 some images that first day.
Wow.
And I had no idea what any of them were for. And I would say, are they colored, or are they just black and white? They're colored. What color? We'll tell you that later. I'd say, can you tell me what they mean? We'll tell you that later. So I had these 65 drawings, and like 2 or 3 weeks into it, I got one that I had finally colored and identified. It was called Love and Trust. It was all about trusting what was happening here. And another week into it, I got this thing that looked like a jellyfish. And I gave it to the medical intuitive to remove poison from a spider bite she had right here on her arm. She'd left, it was a brown recluse bite. And she's like, wow, that thing just removed every bit of that poison for me. I've been working on it for weeks. And she said, just remove the poison.
Really?
So, yeah. So I came home, and I'm in meditation, and I hear, we can give you a process to use that symbol and remove the lump from your breast. So by then I had a couple other symbols as well, and they kind of guided me in the process. And part of it was looking at where I wasn't nurturing myself, because that's what breasts are all about, and did this whole process. The process took about 20 minutes. And when I was done, the lump was gone. Uh-huh. Now,
Wow.
20 minutes.
I mean, has it been confirmed by like you know, what people would consider real medicine? Like, I mean, you really don't have any cancer or any lumps. Like, you're good.
The lump is gone. I'll just say that. I know that because I could feel it. It was the size of a golf ball.
Wow.
And the man I was seeing at the time was like, "Oh my God, it really is gone." Um, Other than that, no, I don't do allopathic medicine, so no, I don't have any tests on that one.
Hmm.
Um,
Now, how
I
long ago was that?
That was in 2001. 2001.
Wow.
Yeah.
So 18 years.
Yeah. And then what happened was I would get another ailment and I'd get the symbol. And I'd do a 20-minute process and it would be gone. Like I'd had bladder infections off and on throughout my life. So I'd get a bladder infection and I'm about to get in the car and drive for 2 hours. And I'm like, this isn't going to work. So I sit down and ask for guidance. I'm shown how to clear the bladder infection and it's gone like that. So after
Wow.
about 8 months of doing those kinds of things, including getting an appendix attack, I did get proven and I healed my thyroid. I'd been on thyroid meds since I was 18 and I went to the doctor and said, I want off of these. And they're like, you can never go off of them. And I'm like, don't tell me never. I'm going to do my own process to heal my thyroid. And you're going to test me now and you're going to test me after I'm done. So they agreed, and I was paying cash, so they didn't have to deal with insurance, all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so they agreed, and she said, now don't take yourself off the thyroid meds until we do the next test. And I'm thinking to myself, that makes no sense to me. How does this prove anything? So yes, I didn't listen to the doctor. And I'm telling you, folks, don't do what I do.
We're not a substitute for medical advice. We're just sharing
Yeah.
our own personal experience here.
Right, right. So I went home, pitched out the thyroid meds, did the process, and went back 3 weeks later when she wanted to retest. And she's like, oh my God, you don't need to be on those meds. You can take and get off of them right now. And I looked at her and said, you really think I've been taking them for the last 3 weeks? She's like, you haven't even been taking them and your results are like that? Oh my God. So
Wow.
that was probably the final straw for me when I finally said, okay, God, you need to let me help other people. I'm tired of getting all these ailments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk to you after this more about the symbols because you mentioned a bladder infection, and I have a friend who just is dealing with that over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe that could be a good fit. But let's talk about how people can reach out to you, how they can stay in touch with you. I know you have a free gift that we're really excited about, helping people create boundless energy in 20 seconds or less. Tell us more about that.
Well, it's a little audio program with symbols. So it does have, I think,
Oh, it has the symbols in
oh,
it?
yes, it has a
Oh,
few symbols.
cool.
So one of them helps you open and balance your chakras, and that works in 20 seconds. And then one of them in that package is called high energy. And you get to work with the symbol, and if you've ever been in if you're like sitting in a really boring meeting and you're like ready to doze off, you pick up the symbol, hold it against your hand, and instantly you will be awake again.
I
And
gotta try this out.
I've had more than one person say that's happened for them. Like, and I tell people, it's like I'm almost 70 years old, and I have.
I'm making like the craziest faces today with you. Like I'm like watching myself in the screen. Like, you're amazing. Please keep going.
And I typically only sleep about 6.5 hours, and I have like all this energy all the time, and not like
You really
bouncy
do.
energy, but I have lots of energy. I can do lots of stuff, and yes, I got a little carried away a couple weeks ago, but yeah, and I attribute a lot of that to the symbols that were given to me from Source, from Spirit, and I am only the channel receiving them, nothing more. But that's what's in the gift, and I think people will really enjoy it because if you want to have a nice energy boost, it's simple. Hold it against your hand.
And we all at least got to try this out
Yes.
and see, right? Remember what we were talking about taking a second look and slowing down, and don't think you know it all. And you're hearing this today for a reason. So I just want to encourage all of you ladies out there to take advantage of Crystalia's free gift. The link is in the email. It's on her speaker page. It's probably right below this video as well. All you have to do is click it, enter your name and your email address, and it'll be instantly transported into your inbox. And you can write us and let us know, did that really give you energy? Does this stuff really work, or are we crazy? We want to know, right?
Right.
All right. Well, that's a
thing to tell people is you do need to print them in color. They work in color. The black and white version doesn't work. So if you're printing it, make sure you print it in color. And you can read it on your monitor if you can't get it printed right away.
Oh, you can watch it on your monitor.
Hold your hand near the monitor and absorb the energy in.
Oh, neat. Yep. Or you can print them out. I'm going to go get mine right now. I got to check this out, man. I got to see. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time and your energy with us today. It's such a pleasure. I cannot believe you're 70 years old. I mean, we've been connected now for years, and you've been just as spunky today as you were 4 years ago when I met you. And so I never even thought about how old you might be, but I was certainly, you could tell on my face, flabbergasted when you let the cat out of the bag. So thank you. You've been so vulnerable, so authentic. You're such a joy to be with, and I'm really grateful. And I'm grateful for all of you for tuning in today. Is there anything else you want to say to our viewers before we go?
Make a promise to yourself that you're going to do one good thing for yourself every day going forward.
Good. Nurture that self-love and grab the Christographs.
There you go.
All right, we're going to sign off now. We love you. Thank you for being with us, and stay tuned tomorrow for another exciting talk on our journey to flourishing in 2019. God bless you all. We got to figure out how to stop recording.